Idaho's physical geography may be the most underrated of any U.S. state in terms of beauty and diversity. It's overshadowed by its neighboring states that are known for their remarkable geography. Wyoming has Yellowstone and the Tetons. Utah has the Mighty Five. Montana has Glacier National Park. All 6 border states have a designated national park. Not just a national park unit, but at least one or more of the 63 designated national parks, and exclusive to within their borders. But Idaho seemingly isn't very interesting. It only has potatoes and blue turf. So in this short video, I'm going to give Idaho the attention it deserves. We'll start with the climate. Idaho has 13 different climate types. Diversity in climate isn't uncommon in this part of the country, but it's still a stark difference to the eastern side of the U.S., where many states only have 1 or 2 climate types. There are of course many different factors at play here, the most obvious being the Rocky Mountains. The high mountains in eastern Idaho and western Montana tend to keep out the cold winter air from the north and east that predominates in Montana and Wyoming, giving the state of Idaho higher mean temperatures than what are typically found at the same latitude and elevation in those states, and in more mid-continental locations. In the eastern side of the state, we can find Idaho's coldest climate, the tundra, though the area it covers is relatively small. This is Idaho's tallest peak, Mount Bora. It stands at 12,662 feet, or 3,859 meters above sea level. It is the 27th most prominent peak in the contiguous U.S. Another notable section of the Rockies within Idaho is the Sawtooth Range, a 43 miles long and 25 miles wide range with 57 mountains reaching at least 10,000 feet. As you can see here, it gets its name from its jagged peaks. You may have noticed this large gap in the mountain range. This is called the Snake River Plain. This is where the majority of people in Idaho live and where the potatoes are grown. This area doesn't receive much rainfall. Most of the Snake River Plain receives less than 10 inches a year. Though this plain is lower than most of the state, it still sits relatively high in elevation. Boise, Idaho's capital and most populated city, sits at just over 2,700 feet in elevation. To the east, you have Idaho Falls, the state's largest city outside of the Boise metropolitan area. It sits at an elevation of 4,705 feet. This area of Idaho is where the majority of potatoes are grown. Precipitation is relatively sparse. The majority of water used for crop irrigation comes as the snow melts throughout the growing season. Combine that with the relatively high elevation, so the days are warm and the nights are cool, you have an ideal environment for potatoes. It's not so different than where the potatoes were first grown, the Peruvian Andes. The eastern side of this plain was formed by a succession of caldera-forming eruptions. Responsible for these eruptions is the Yellowstone hotspot. This hotspot doesn't move, but the North American plate has. Today, the hotspot sits in and around Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone caldera refers both to 3 overlapping calderas in and around Yellowstone National Park, as well as the newest caldera within the park. One of the calderas is completely in Idaho. This is the Henry's Fork caldera, which was formed by an eruption 1.3 million years ago. The eruption distributed at least 280 cubic kilometers, or 65 cubic miles, of ash, covering a region including all of Wyoming and most of Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas. Another is partially within Idaho. This is the Island Park caldera. This eruption occurred 2.1 million years ago and produced approximately 2,200 cubic kilometers, or 530 cubic miles, of ash, covering around half of what would become the United States. For comparison, the debris produced from this explosion is 2,500 times as much ash as the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. Which brings up another reason that potatoes grow so well in Idaho: the soil. As we've seen, Idaho has a pretty long history of volcanic activity. Volcanoes erupted, leaving debris over its surface. Over time, it broke down and created nutrient-rich and well-draining soil that is perfect for agriculture, especially growing potatoes. Today, there are 3 active volcanoes in Idaho. These are not considered active because they are currently erupting, but because they have erupted in the last 10,000 years. All three are shield volcanoes, and in relative proximity to one another. They are the Wappi lava field, which last erupted in 300 BC, Hell's Half Acre, which last erupted in 3250 BC, and Craters of the Moon, which last erupted in 130 BC. Craters of the Moon, the last of the three to erupt, may be the most likely in the state to erupt again. Over the past 15,000 years, eruptions at Craters of the Moon have occurred about every 3,000 years, the last being, as stated before, around 130 BC, and so the next eruption might be expected sometime in the next 1,000 years. 8 different eruption episodes are known, and each episode lasted hundreds to perhaps thousands of years. There are over 60 separate lava flows which together cover over 600 square miles. The volcano's name was coined in the early 20th century by a geologist advocating for its protection, because it was thought that it looked like the surface of the moon. In 1969, Apollo astronauts performed part of their training at Craters of the Moon. This was in preparation for moon landings, by learning to look for and collect good rock specimens. Since they could only carry but so much weight on the return trip, they needed to be selective. Craters of the Moon National Monument was proclaimed on May 2, 1924, by U.S. President Calvin Coolidge to preserve the unusual and weird volcanic formations. Idaho does actually have a national park. It's Yellowstone. Many people generally think about the park being in Wyoming, which of course the majority of it is, but there is actually a small section of it in Idaho. In this section are tons of wildlife, creeks, meadows, geothermal areas, and forests, all things you would of course expect to find in other parts of Yellowstone. But being a protected wilderness isn't unique to this section of Idaho. I've already mentioned the Craters of the Moon, but Idaho actually has the greatest percentage of national forest land of any U.S. state, with nearly 40% of its total area protected. In total, this is almost 21 million acres. More related to political geography, but still interesting, is that supposedly this section of the park has created a legal loophole where you can commit any crime and potentially get away with it, including murder. See, the federal government has exclusive jurisdiction over Yellowstone National Park, so crimes committed in the park cannot be prosecuted under any of the state's laws. And because the United States District Court for the District of Wyoming covers all of Yellowstone, it actually reaches into this portion of Idaho. The Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution also states that juries in federal criminal cases must be made up of citizens who are from both the district and state where the crime was committed. This wouldn't be a big deal, but this portion of Idaho is uninhabited, so a jury of residents of both the state and district isn't possible. Being unable to receive a constitutional trial, in theory, you can't be legally punished, regardless of guilt or innocence. But we'll see how this plays out if someone ever challenges it. Let's go back and take another look at the Snake River Plain. Of course, this is named after the Snake River. This river and its tributaries have carved up sections of the landscape, making many gorges and canyons, such as Hell's Canyon, a popular recreation area shared with Oregon and Washington. And a little bit further east is another notable canyon, Bruneau Canyon. Another remarkable feature of the river is Shoshone Falls. The waterfall is 212 feet in height, making it 45 feet higher than Niagara Falls, and flows over a rim nearly 1,000 feet in width. There is one area of Idaho that would likely make most people fail a GeoGuessr. A small section of Idaho has a cold desert climate. Within the desert is the Bruneau Dunes. These dunes are home to the site of North America's tallest single-structured sand dune, which is approximately 470 feet in height. Some other notable places in Idaho are the Shoshone Ice Caves, Minnetonka Cave, the Black Cliffs, Fall Creek Falls, Gold Bug Hot Springs, the Silent City of Rocks, the St. Anthony Sand Dunes, and not a geographic feature itself, but still relevant, the Map Rock, a petroglyph map of the Upper Snake River carved by prehistoric hunter-gatherers, possibly as long as 12,000 years ago. So what other amazing places and interesting facts about Idaho's physical geography did I miss? Let us know in the comments below. If you're interested, I sell a couple map prints of Idaho as well as other US states on my website at thegeographygeek.com. Shout out to all my Patreon and YouTube members for supporting the channel, and thank you all for watching.